Hello. My next guest is Steve Watson, who has just co authored the latest book exclusively about peregrine falcons. If you ever wanted to know what jobs are out there, well, you could do worse than become an author. Steve talks about his writing habits, and moreover, he talks about the content of the book, The Peregrine Falcon, talking about populations around the world, the fact there are 19 subspecies of peregrine falcon around the world, conservation measures, and lots more besides. I began by asking Steve what it takes to be a successful author. Here's what he told me.
I think the first thing is you've got to be pretty sure of your subject. So you need a lot of experience. I think you need to have read as widely as you possibly can all the current literature out there worldwide. And I suppose also you really do need that field experience to make it readable and to make it real to the amateur ornithologist or the professional ornithologist indeed. So you need a combination of things. But if you're professing to want to write a monograph, in effect, you are saying you are capable of writing it, and you can't really start to think about it unless you know your subject very well indeed, and you feel you can contribute something other than that is already out there. For us, we felt that the last real monograph that was done on peregrines was 2014, Clayton White in America. And before that, of course, the very great Derek Ratcliffe, who wrote the first one, which was always the Bible and always will be the Bible in my mind. So really, that's a long answer to a short question. I hope that's okay, though.
It is. So it's very similar, really, to the mentality of doing a PhD. You're kind of adding.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. I think this is a sort of PhD on steroids in reality. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that this is way beyond a PhD. What I am saying, though, it requires a drive and commitment over an extended period of time, probably 2 years in our case, and a determination to do what it takes and take as long as it takes to get everything absolutely right. You write a monograph that is as good as it possibly can be, but as I said before, it must say something more to the modern audience that has already been done, and therefore that starts the process. There's no point in rewriting the history books; it's pointless. So, but there's a lot of new stuff out there since the last one was done.
How do you go about it, Steve? I mean, does the research come first? Does a publisher approach you? Do you approach a publisher? How does it work?
Yeah, all good questions, and it's very specific in our case. Richard Sale, my co-author and principal author, I would say, is a publisher in his own right. So, that's straightforward. He's already an internationally renowned raptor writer, and he's won 3 prizes from the Wildlife Society in America already for Book of the Year, for different books. So I knew I was on a winner teaming up with him. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is I've been studying peregrines for 40 years now in the field. And I'm also a bit of a dab hand with numbers, graphs, all of that stuff, because my background is I'm a chartered accountant. So I've got the numbers, I've got that, and I can add to Richard. Richard lives 8 miles from me, believe it or not, in the Cotswolds.
Wow.
So when he won the last award, I thought, I need to find this guy. So I found him, met him in a pub one night in 2015, and we started talking and realized we had a lot in common. I had stuff he didn't have, knowledge. He had the science, which I certainly don't have. And it was a fascinating growing of a friendship. which culminated in about 2017. I said to Richard, I think there should be a Peregrine monograph, coming out soon. He said, you're the one to do it. He said, no, I'm not going to touch it. It's already been done. I'm not qualified in that area. I'll do Merlin and Kestrel and Hobby. 2019, I said, Richard, I really think you should do Peregrine. He said, no, not a chance. 2020, having won the Book of the Year with Kestrel, I think it's 2021, I put the question to him. He said, maybe I will. So that's where it started. So the thing there is get to know the right people, have a project that you both are totally engaged in 100%, and then go for, as long as you feel you've got something, and I keep saying this, but it's important, you've got something else to add.
How do you know when you've got something else to add? By simply reading the books that have gone before and saying, actually, they haven't addressed this.
Absolutely right. Now, from Richard's point of view, it's flight dynamics. He's an astrophysicist as well as a writer. So he's a bit of a polymath. So he has built small units, about 3 grams, and he puts them on tails of birds, and he puts a barometer on there, a gyroscope, and he links it with 7 or 8 satellites, and he gets fixing data. So therefore, he can calculate height, speed, change of direction, how the wings work. So that's never been done before, because what he is this unique person who's an astrophysicist, a nuclear physicist, but also a raptor nut. So he could bring that. No one else could bring that. Okay, so in addition to that, I've done a lot of work on population in the UK and in the world, but in the UK in particular, because the population data needed improving. So I was working often with a guy called Mark Wilson in the BTO, who was their lead ornithologist on the 2014 survey. And we've been having a lot of conversation about that survey and previous ones. And I helped him to some degree modify his 2014 data. So what I then wanted to do was to go to BTO and talk to them about this, but also then to reanalyze the data in the format for 2014 reporting. And by that, I mean Ratcliffe did 4 years worth of data, only 11 categories of the country, regions. Now in 2014, it's 27 regions. So what I've done is I've rebased all the data to 27 regions going back to 1939. So now you can chloropleth map the whole sequence and map it and color code it and see how it's changed. And we present that in the book. Now that's not new data necessarily, but it's new visualization. But we've also done studies on the population movement from 2014 to 2021, which isn't in the public domain. And we've established critically, I think, that a lot of the urbanization from in London in particular and coming north, lots of peregrines in cities and towns, a lot of that was seeded from Europe based on the data we have. This has never been said before. So I think that is very interesting, and it's something we wanted to put in the book. Also, Richard has done a lot of CT scanning work on the head and the humerus bone. So we've now sectioned the head of a peregrine, multiple cuts, and got a document together which shows exactly what is underneath the head at the nasal end and showing at the nares what is behind it. That's new. That's not been done before, and it is fascinating. I don't know whether you've got or read the book, John.
Unfortunately not, no.
You'll have to buy it.
Yeah, where can I get it from?
Me. Hey, look, I'm only joking. I'm not pushing you for a sale. That's not what I'm doing. But you're very welcome to buy one from me and I'll sign it for you. But you don't have to do that. So
does the book cater for falconers, or is it exclusively ornithology?
It's a book about the peregrine falcon. Okay. So it's ornithologically based. But interestingly, and something that surprised us, one of the most the better audiences we've got are the falconry people in America, in Dubai, in Australia, in Germany. And here we are finding that falconers are really loving it because they're seeing stuff they've never seen before. but also they're seeing a mass of first-class imagery because we've got 385 color pictures. So this is not a dry tomb. This is up to the minute science, illustrated with the best pictures we could find of all the subspecies on the planet. And there are 19 subspecies. So we've gone worldwide and we've taken all the best pictures we could get, asked the authors or the photographers to give us permission. Some did, some didn't. The ones that did are pleased because they've had a free book, and a bit of kudos because it's in there. So this is not a dry tomb. This is something that would appeal to a child who's looking at peregrines and wanting to understand, to a professional ornithologist who's going to pick up new science, and I think to a lay reader to some degree this will be of interest, because the peregrine, for me, you can see it captivates me, can't you? The way I talk, I am completely enthralled to peregrines, always have been. But there is a magic about the bird that we like to think we portray. And there's a spirituality in the book. There's some poetry in the book, which hits the nerve for me, hits the spot for me. So it's not just science. It's a bit more than that. It's lovely illustrations. It's a bit to hit the heart and the head as well.
Steve, what jobs are there with peregrine falcons? Can you say?
What jobs? Well, there's a lot of people, not jobs as such, but there are a lot of people that ring birds in cities. So you've got BTO ringers. You've got people who look after the birds and set up webcams for them. You've got people who protect them. You've got RSPB people who protect them. So there's a sort of, there are jobs that are around peregrines, not specifically necessarily directly related to them. The population is doing incredibly well. So the conservation aspect of it is now, not an endangered species. It's a Schedule 1 species, but it's not endangered. So back in the 80s, it was. So all the efforts of conservationists are about making sure they bred, making sure no one could get at them. The one thing that is an issue in this country, I'm afraid, and you will know it being in Yorkshire, is persecution. And in some particular places, it's very bad. And I think there needs to be a public awareness of this. And just drifting slightly off the question, this week we've had some terrible, shocking information from Chris Packham and Ruth Tingate, but the degree of hate these guys are getting for simply putting their hand up and saying, we're conservationists, we don't think this is right, it's got to stop. And they're getting a lot of hate, and it's awful, and there's going to be a legal case on this particular subject. So I've gone off piste there, but it's something that's close to my heart, So jobs, it's about conservation, it's about webcamming, it's about filming them, it's about protecting them, and it's about public awareness, generally.
Steve, so in the UK, the British population of peregrines, stable, growing, decreasing?
Growing. 1750, I'm going to throw some numbers at you now. You expect me to, 1753 pairs in the UK, excluding the Channel Islands, where there were 16 in 2014. The book, were you to get it? The book will tell you, the book will tell you that there's around about, I think, 2,000, maybe 2,000 to 2,500 pairs now. Dramatic increase. Biggest population ever known in the UK, looking down at history by a long chalk. Why? Urbanization. People put nest boxes up, they look after them, they webcam them. It becomes a social media event in the locality. People love their peregrines. They're a charismatic bird, and they're doing incredibly well. And in fact, their productivity in urban environments is one fledgling on average extra than the traditional counterpart on the seacoast per breeding season. It's dramatic. So they do well, and then they produce and breed well, and therefore the breeding excess finds another site which is similar to the natal site, and we've done some work on that as well, which is novel, I think. So what you're seeing is a massive expansion coming from the south, because I think it was seeded from Europe, because their urban population predated ours. And they got surpluses that came on normal dispersal, females coming across the channel and thinking, oh, there's a nice building there. Someone's put a nest box up. Great. I'll take that. So we've got lots of, we've got at the moment in London, when we did the study, 3 Dutch birds, females, and 1 French. Since then, I know 2 more. and that's of the ringed population. So in London, we've now got 51 breeding pairs. That's in the LNHS 20 square mile radius, 20-mile radius, should I say, around St. Paul's. We've got 51 pairs from 0 in 2000.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
It is. Steve, what about the rest of the Peregrines range? Though you said there was 19 subspecies?
19 subspecies worldwide, every continent.
Every continent. How are they doing? Is there any particular country where they're decreasing drastically and endangered?
That's a really good question. I think the answer to that is actually, at the moment, no. If we hark back to historical times in the 60s when DDT was a thing, and when the cyclodine pesticides were introduced in 1956, then the whole of the eastern seaboard, the whole of the east of America was devoid of peregrines completely. So that was an issue then. There was an issue here as well, and it was an issue worldwide, particularly adjacent to farming land. Generally speaking, though, the story is the same. Urbanization has happened in synchrony throughout the world. Don't ask me quite why. The factors are probably similar, but we're seeing big increases in urban populations in most continents.
How do you go about writing a book like this, Steve? I mean, do you write better in the morning, evening, all day? Does somebody need to be tired to write this book?
Interesting you should ask that. I'm a night owl. Richard is a skylark in the morning, so he's up at 4 o'clock writing, and I'm really writing from probably about I'm doing analysis work as well, from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to about 12 o'clock at night. So when he gets up, he sees all my stuff, 9 hours worth. When I get up, I see all his stuff. So that's how we do it. But I mean, we're good friends as well. And I think as co-authors, you have to be good friends. You have to be on each other's wavelength. You have to trust the other person to be right. And, you know, that trust is hard to find sometimes when you're putting a book out there for public consumption, for consumption by experts as well as amateurs. You know, you're on a hiding to nothing if you don't get it right. So that's how we work.
Can a field conservationist, a conservation project director, reading your book, dealing with some very rare species of raptor, can they read the book and think, actually, I didn't think of that. That could make a difference to our project outcomes?
Again, John, that's a good question, which I probably want notice of. Probably not, in fact, because this is not an area we particularly major on. We do see the benefits to peregrines of conservation strategies. And we do see what the BTO have done, what RSPB have done, what amateurs have done to make a home for a peregrine and protect it. That's important. But I don't think really there's anything new in what we've written on that particular subject that would engender that sort of reaction from a conservationist of another species. No, I don't really think so.
10 years from now, Steve, where do you see conservation of peregrine falcon studies? Where do you see it going?
I suspect, John, we're going to have a continuation of the massive increase in urban peregrines. And I think to that extent, it will become a species that is well known by the public at large, because they will be seen over cities and people will see them zooming through the sky and say, what's that? So I think that's the way it's going to go. I suspect that on their natural traditional sites, like coastal cliffs, farmland, there'll be more pressure on those birds and they will reduce, I feel, simply because we're expanding food supplies as a population in the world grows 7 billion, 10 billion in however many years, I don't know the numbers, but dramatic increase in human populations require feeding, require taking the ecosystem away from birds in particular in traditional sites. So I think we're going to see urbanization taking a really big step forward. And I think you're going to see other birds coming into that as well, into that urbanization. And the ones, I think the species that are really going to do well in the 21st century are those that can adapt to man and what man does. And the ones that will suffer will be the ones sort of left behind, the global warming influences, etc., negatively, habitat being lost. And really now is the time to stop that happening. Attenborough is right. Of course he is. All the conservationists are right. We've got to get back to nature. We've got to give nature priority. It's absolutely essential that we live with it and don't destroy it if we have a future. And that is the final paragraph in our book. It's absolutely vital. We see peregrines thriving in a semi-artificial state, let's be fair, but they do well because they've got this cosmopolitan diet, Catholic diet. They can eat anything, take anything. So if one bird through global warming moves its area of range, another one will come in and it will take that just as well. So peregrines are inured from this to some degree, I think. So that's what I'd say, as a wrap up to. And John, I'm going to have to wrap unless you've got any big questions, because I've got another meeting at 2:45 and I've just got 3 minutes preparation to do. But fire away if you need to ask another question.
Mm-hmm. Anything you'd like to add? How can people get the book?
Okay, John. Well, thank you for that opportunity. You can get the book through Raptor Aid, CIO, and they're a conservation charity. Richard and I give 10% of all our income to them to help them conserve raptors generally. You can get it from NHBS and you can get it from Beautio in the States, big online bookshop, or you can come direct to me and get it from me and I'll sign it for you and give you a discount. How about that? So that's where you get the book from.
Steve Watson, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.